Hey everyone, my name is Andrew Hess. What we're going to do today is we're going to take one of your questions that you left for me in the YouTube comments section, and we are going to answer and make a video on one of those questions. And because it's 2025, I thought we would start from the very beginning again. Since Power Apps is always changing, let's create a basic custom form in Power Apps. Let's get into it and let's see what we're going to learn today. Today, we're going to focus on first, we're going to create a SharePoint list in our Microsoft 365 tenant. And then we're going to build a responsive Power App. So this is going to have containers. It's going to be simple. I think there's only going to be about 4 or 5 fields. We're going to go over text, choice, multi-line text, and date field. So about 4 fields. And we are going to do a custom form, not a submit form, and we will patch our submission to SharePoint. And then I had to edit this video because it was getting so long. There was so much knowledge that we were sharing here that next time we're going to go over things like resetting controls, delegation in SharePoint. And another thing that we're going to talk about is accessibility. I feel like that's something people don't talk about as much. We need to make sure these apps are accessible. They're using colors that are friendly for everyone. On that note, let's start with number 1. Let's set up a SharePoint list. All right, so we're in a brand new SharePoint, and I named the SharePoint site 2025 list. And this SharePoint site collection is connected to a Microsoft team. How do I know it's connected to a Microsoft team? You can see the Teams icon right here next to the title. So there's a few different ways to create a SharePoint list. You could come down to site contents and do new list. But the easiest way right now is to just click on New List to create a brand new list in SharePoint. Just keeping it nice and simple and a blank list. And the name of our list, I think today we're going to do it on Project Proposal. So we're going to create our list on Project Proposals. And notice there's no spaces in there. Don't add a space yet to your SharePoint list. I know this seems silly, but don't do it on the first try. And then now you can add a space to it if you'd like. And that is just because of that underlying URL. The main reason I did that is so the URL up here does not have a bunch of %20s, a bunch of special characters that are in the URL. So I named my SharePoint list without a space. And I normally do the same thing with all of my columns too. No spaces in my columns. I know maybe you think there should be spaces and maybe it will take you 30 extra seconds to add a space the second time, but do this for your list and your columns. So for my first column, I'm going to do, let's do email. So text, email. How about user email? We never want to use out of the box field names. So I'm not sure if email is out of the box or not. And when I say out of the box, that means something by default that Microsoft already gives you. So if we tried to do the column created, right, it's not going to let us create this column because it already exists. And email may be one, but just for clarity, I'm going to do user email for my column. Next, I think we'll do a choice column. And the choice column will be a status. And for our choices, we will do draft, submitted, and approved. All right, so we have different choices in there. If we want to, we can change the color of our pills. That's what they call them. They call them different pills. So you can change the colors of these if you'd like. So they look a little different, and probably approved should be a green. Draft is red, submitted blue, approved is green. Make sure that when you pick colors, they're intuitive. I know this is another idea, but this is a best practice. When people see the color red, they think stop, they think no. So draft is a good one. Submitted should be more of a neutral color, and approved normally should almost always be some version of green. Green to me means go, green to me means good. Green is the color to move forward, everything is good. So think about that when you're building out your apps. Approved is green. All right, so next let's do a description column. I want a multi-line text in here. So multiple lines of text, give us a description. And maybe, once again, don't use that out of the box. So let's say proposal description. And once again, no spaces in our column names. And we'll click save. And inside a multi-line text field, you can always do enhanced rich text. So that's very useful. Enhanced rich text. And finally, I think we need a date column. Let's do start date, proposal start date. So this is the date, and I'm going to do just a date field and not include the time. And we'll say, yeah, put it in a friendly format. So we have 5 columns: title, user email, status, proposal description, and proposal start time. And finally, with title, never delete title. I see this all the time. People try and hide, delete title, change it. Just come into column settings, give it a rename, and call it proposal. Now, if you want the 20 seconds about why you should never delete title, try adding in a proposal in here. And you notice that this field comes with extra functionality. It comes with the 3 dots. It comes with the add comments button. There's extra functionality that comes with the title field. You never want to delete the title field, else you're going to run into all these issues. You know, all of this extra functionality that comes with the title field, it's going to be gone. Okay, so we have a nice SharePoint list. Let's add a real proposal in here. Let's do a project proposal on a Copilot Studio bot that, I'm not sure, grabs the weather. And the user email, right now we don't have anything that kind of helps us do that, but we can say andrew.hess@mysharepointquestions.onmicrosoft.com. Now, if you email me at this email, I probably will not pay attention. This is a dev environment. This is not an email that I check a lot. So here, the status, we'll say it's a draft. The project description, we'll say gets the weather of your location, and you can ask generative questions. So that'll be our multi-line text field. The project proposal start date will be somewhere in the future. Let's do Valentine's. It'll be on Valentine's, and I'm going to click save. I probably will disable attachments. So because I'm in a SharePoint list, I'll click save. I'll come to the gear icon, list settings, advanced list settings, and I am going to disable attachments. I'll probably say not allow comments too. I don't want people in my SharePoint backend. And this warning is important. If you're not using a brand new list, you will delete all of your attachments in that column. So don't do this on a production list that has attachments in there. All right, so now we have our project proposal. We have removed attachments. Also, the comments has been removed. Now let's go to the fun part, and let's go to Power Apps and create a form based on this. I'm going to delete this first row item. All right, so to go to Power Apps, I'm going to go to the waffle. That's what I call it, the waffle, and then Power Apps. And inside Power Apps, when you get in here, always check your default environment. So because this is a dev tenant for me, my default environment is my name, but make sure you're in the right environment. As your Power Apps grows at your company, you may have different environments. Double check your environment if you don't see your Power App. So to create a new, I'm going to go to, let me zoom in a little more. Let me go over this screen a little bit. At the front end, right now in 2025, you have Copilot right here to help you build. And there's all this functionality that's coming out for this. You know, you're going to be able to put a plan together. You're going to create it through Copilot. But all of that right now is Dataverse only. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go to create from a blank app. We're not going to do from a SharePoint list. We could do that, but it's going to give you some default functionality. I just want to start from a blank app. So a blank app, blank canvas app. We're not going to do Dataverse and we're not going to do Power Pages today. And always, always tablet. Maybe there's a 5% chance that you start with a phone, but you can just make your tablet app responsive and then it will work for your phone. So this is going to be project proposals. And I'm going to click create. So now we're creating a blank Power App and our backend is going to be SharePoint. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the new data icon over here. You can see this data icon and they changed it. In 2025, the icon has changed. Microsoft makes changes a lot. So that's why we keep creating new videos is there's lots of changes. There's now a new data icon here. And I'm going to add data. And when I click on add data, we can look at my SharePoint site again. So my SharePoint site was called 2025 list. It's a brand new SharePoint site I created. Let's go back to create. I'm going to go to SharePoint. It's going to ask for credentials. If you don't have your credentials in here, it will ask for your credentials. And the SharePoint list that I'm doing is right here at the top. Now, if you can't find your SharePoint list, you can always type it in there. So if we came in here and we had the SharePoint list URL, we could type in the URL of the site collection. So this is the top level site of your site collection, and we'll click connect. And we can see here my list called project proposal. And you notice the space in there. We can see the space in there. We'll click connect. All right, we have now connected our Power App to our SharePoint list. So that data can now be pulled into our Power App. So to keep this as simple and as simple as possible, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to new screen and I'm going to choose the header footer. In my preference, I really like this header footer template. I'm going to actually use it. And if it comes up with screen too. So what I'm probably going to do is I'm just going to delete my first screen. So right now, it's actually not responsive. If I press play, the screen does not resize itself. To do that, I'm going to come up to the settings, and then I'm going to go to display, and I'm going to turn off scale to fit, which also turns off lock aspect ratio. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on modern controls under updates. The modern controls are not 100% yet, but I still like to use them. And so I'm going to use them in this video. You'll have to decide if you like the modern controls yet or not. I like to use this screen to template for me. And sometimes I like to get rid of the footer. So I'm just going to highlight the footer and click delete. Now you can make these decisions for yourself. Do you want the footer? Do you want the header? Etc. So let's just take a look at it right now. When I press play, you can see that our form is right here centered. It's responsive. It works on different phone sizes. It works in the window. It resizes itself. We can do canvas, same thing. I really like the way this looks right now. One thing you want to do is you can see we're in screen container 1. Let's change the color of it. Let's make it like a icy blue. So I'll give it a blue and I'll come in here to colors or in custom and I'll kind of lighten that blue up to become like an icy blue. What I like to do, and this is preference once again, is I'm going to come to screen container 1 and I'm going to click align horizontal center. And that kind of centers it out. Let's take a look at it on the phone. So if we go to the phone, it's still looking good. We can't really see it all. It's not fitting in there perfectly. So let's make it fit how we want it to fit. And to do that, we have to look at what's called screen size. All right, so let me explain to you the different screen sizes. In Power Apps, there's 4 different screen sizes. And let me just add a text to show you. So I'm going to call on screen2.size. And right now you can see it's a 4. Let's make sure that's nice and big for us. All right, so we have a number in there. And watch what happens when I resize my screen. So let's go to phone. It turns to 1. Let's go to maybe a type of tablet, like a small tablet. It goes to 2. And I think a large tablet in here, somewhere in here, there's a screen size 3. And there it is. So the Apple iPad Pro is a 3. And then finally, if we go to Canvas, it becomes a 4. So each of your screen sizes are like a variable of 1, 2, 3, or 4. So 1 is your mobile, 2 and 3 are different size tablets. And finally, 4 is going to be your full Canvas screen. So what I want to do is for the width of main container 1, I want to say if this screen, which is screen 2 that I'm on, screen2.size is equal to 1, then we're going to say it's equal to parent.width. The parent of main container 1 is screen container 1. But if it's not mobile, I want to say it's parent.width divided by 2 to give it a little bit less space so it doesn't expand so far. So let's look at it now. So on a large screen, we're at half the size, and notice these curves right here. This will help us kind of look at that. Let's make the curve, the border radius, let's make it 50. So we can really see those curves. So we can see that curve here, and now let's go to mobile. So you can see that curve is still there. We're still fitting it in there, nice and perfect. We're fitting our form in there. And so this is just a good way for you to resize your app. Now maybe you want to do, different ones for each one. So if it's equal to screen size 1, it's parent.width. If it's equal to screen size 2, it's a different, maybe it's divided by 3. That's up to you. So I'm going to take this same width and I'm going to put it on my header container. All right, so now these are resizing to our app. If we go to the phone, we can see our containers are resizing themselves. I'm going to lower that border radius back down. All right, so we have our screens in here, and maybe that border radius needs to be a little bit higher. Now, another thing that is really helpful about containers is the shadow property. So let me move me. Inside our containers, there is a property all the way down here called drop shadow. You can turn that to semi-bold to give it more of a shadow, give it that 3D look and feel. I think that kind of helps. You can also edit the top border. So maybe we want the radius of the top left border to be 0. The radius of the bottom of the top right border is also 0. That way it kind of fits in there. So you can see now that we've removed those borders. We have our header up here. Sometimes I like to remove that. The bottom right border to 0 and the bottom left radius border to 0 also. So now it kind of looks like it fits in there. But when we go to Canvas, this is how it looks. We have our form and our header container. Maybe one thing I like to do also is lower that gap. I feel like that gap is a little too much. I like to have all the space that I can. So just a little tiny gap in there. It looks like a line. I kind of like this look. This is my opinion. So we have 2 containers up here. We have a very thin line, and we have the border radius down here on screen size 4. And you can see how it looks on the phone too. Okay, so now I'm going to delete this text canvas. I no longer want that text canvas. We understand how the screen size works. Now, let's start adding some fields in here. Now, because we're in main container 1, this is a vertical container. So if we come in here in vertical, you can see it's a vertical container. As we add things, they're going to start going downwards in a vertical manner. So the first thing we'll do is we'll add a text. And then after the text, we will add a text input. All right, so you can see how they're kind of lining down like that. And I'm going to center them. And let's see here. Maybe we want to justify center like that also. And then our text also, we want it to be aligned in the center. All right, so everything's kind of aligning in the center. As we add things, we'll start aligning them more down the center. So this is if we look at our SharePoint list, this is our proposal. Next we have user email. So I'm going to add another text and another text input. All right, and we'll align it in a minute. Then we have status, description and proposal date. So the next one we're going to add is a text, and then we're going to do a drop down. I'm going to do a drop down. I'll do the new modern drop down also. It is 2025. We'll add that in there. Then we're going to have another text, but this next text is going to be a multi-line text field. Now there's many different ways you could do this. We could add just another text input. There's a few different texts that we can do in here. We could do a rich text editor. So when we come in here, you can see the rich text editor kind of gives us more functionality. Maybe we want to keep the rich text editor, but you could see that it didn't resize itself. So let's give it a width of parent.width, maybe minus 40. How about, let's try 40. Let's see how that looks right now. So you can see now our rich text editor fits in there. Maybe 40 is a little too large. Maybe we'll go to parent.width minus 20, just to kind of give us some area in there. And maybe you hate the rich.text. Maybe you don't want all that in there. Like, I don't need all that in there. For today, I'm going to keep it in there. We'll give it more of a height. So I'll increase the height on it to maybe 400. Let's give it a lot more space. And then finally, we need one more field, and that is the date field. So we're going to insert a text, and it is going to have a date picker, and we'll do the new modern one. Now you can see everything's not fitting in here perfectly. What I'm going to do is, in case your phone enlarges itself, I'm going to highlight everything. I'm just going to hold down Control, highlight everything. I think I'm missing the date picker. We can click on it here, and I'm going to say flexible height, right? And so flexible height is going to allow it to resize itself. Everything is able to be resized. But for the rich text editor, I'm going to increase my fill portions, maybe to 5, and maybe we'll go 6, or let's go 8. Let's give it a lot of space in there. You get lots of space for your rich text editor. Let's take a look at it in the phone. This is how it looks. Date is not fitting in there well, and the title is not fitting in there well. So on my main container 1, I'm going to create a padding at the top, maybe at about 10, and a padding at the bottom, about 10 also. So now things are fitting in there. We have a little space. We can do our date picker. We have our space in here, and we can write. So now let's fill in each of our titles, but first I'm going to center all of them. So I'm just holding down Control as I click on all these titles, and I'm going to click on Align Center. All right, and so now we're going to go to the first text. Now, as we're building out this form, when we're doing custom forms, it's much more important to rename each of your properties in your custom form, because you're going to be calling on these properties in formulas and FX formulas that you write. So right here, I'm going to rename this one, and I'm going to name this one Label Proposal, because this is just a label. That's all this is. And we're going to write the text proposal. Next, our text input canvas 1, which is right here, I'm going to rename to TXT proposal. And then nothing will be in there. It will be blank. So right now it just looks like that. Okay, so the next one is, what was the next one? User email. All right, so for our second property, our second one here, I think we'll leave it in here. I have some ideas for email, but we'll just, for now, we'll do rename label email. Let's just go ahead and just make it simple for right now. Email. Next is going to be the status. So this is the status. So rename label status. And for drop-down canvas, let me move me now. For drop-down canvas, I do DRP. I've seen DD. I've seen DRP. I've seen DD. I like DRP. As long as you're consistent at your work, that's what's important. You need to come up with a set of standards. I like to do DRP, status. Next we have description. So we'll do label description. And for the rich text editor, I like to just name it the same as txt description. Maybe you want to change it to rich or HTML, but I'm just going to do txt description. And finally, we have our label start date. And our date picker, I like to do DTE for date, start date. All right, so we've renamed everything. Oh, we forgot to write in here. Let's see. We forgot to write in status. Status, and this one is description. All right, so we have it kind of all fitting in there. Let's kind of take a look at it. This is what it looks like in mobile and canvas. This is what it looks like. So to me, I think it's looking decently beautiful. For the amount of work that we've done on this, we've made it look pretty good. It resizes itself on both formats. I'm going to keep it in canvas mode. Okay, so now let's add a submit button. All right, so we're going to talk about some more opinions. When you have short forms, in my opinion, it's okay to add a save button here at the top right. There's nothing wrong with adding a save button here. I think that's a used approach many times, is having a save button up here. When you have long forms, so imagine you had a long form and you're scrolling through and you've scrolled through, where do you think the save button for me should be? For me, my opinion is maybe after you scroll through the entire form, because you want people to fill out all the data, the save button should be at the bottom of the form. So that's just opinion from me. Let's go ahead and fix this one to proposal start date. Now we're going to put in the save button. Now this is opinion. I'm going to put my save button up here. So insert a save button. And right now you can see the header container. So take a look at the header container. The header container is a horizontal container. So as we add things, it will adjust them horizontally as you put them in. I'm going to insert a save button. Let's do a save icon. Let's just do a classic save icon. Keep it very simple for this demo. And I'm going to pull it over to the right. So to do that, I click on the container and we can justify horizontal on the end. And I'm going to give it a padding on the right. So right above me, let's see, make sure we can see. So right above me, right here, padding on the right, I'll change that to a 20 just to get it off of that edge and maybe give it a 5 at the top. Kind of put it in there in the center. This is how it looks on phone, and this is how it looks on the canvas, which are, in my opinion, my primary two ways that people access my Power Apps. Normally, we don't have people on tablets. If you have people on tablets, you need to rethink how you design your Power App. All right, so now that we have all of these fields in here, let's work on our save button. So when you click on the save button, we want it to write to SharePoint. In order to write to SharePoint, instead of doing submit form, which is how we did our last one in 2024, we normally did submit form, form 1, that's how we did it. We don't have a form 1 this time. This time, we've customly, that's a hard word to say, customly, okay, added our fields in here. So because our form is custom, we're going to do a patch statement. So what are we going to patch? We are going to patch our SharePoint list, project proposal. So that's the name of our SharePoint list. And we're going to do a comma. And for now, we're just going to say defaults to project proposal. And defaults is just, so when I say defaults, just think that I'm generating a new record. That's how we're going to do it. We're just telling Power Apps that, hey, we're going to do a new record. There are ways that you could skip this, change this. You could do lookups, but we're not going to get in that today. We're just going to keep this very simple. Today, we're going to create a new record. And inside our new record, the first thing we're going to do is do a squiggly. Notice that word that I was saying, record. Record is a little squiggly mark. That's how we know we're going to write a record. So once we write our squiggly mark, it now gives us some intelligence about what to write. And the first thing we're going to do is title. All right, so first our title is going to be, so this is why we renamed everything, text proposal dot value. The reason it is dot value is because we are using modern controls. If you do not use modern, it may be dot text. So in order to figure these things out, use the intelligence of Power Apps, right? Power Apps is going to help you. Add a period at the end. Say, oh, is it dot text? Is it dot value? Right here, it thinks that it is dot value. That's its first option it gave us. And as you're going through here, notice the color coding. This really helps beginners. The text proposal is green, it matches. Next, what we're going to do is email. And notice I started typing an email, but the IntelliSense says, hey, no, this is called user email in SharePoint. So the first field is from our data source, SharePoint. The second field is what we want to write from. And that is going to be, oh, and I didn't rename it. I should have. I should have renamed this to text email. That's why it's important. And this is going to be text email dot value. Okay, so next we're going to do status. So if I start typing in status, it does say, hey, it's called status in SharePoint. So status, right here, status is going to be our dropdown status dot. Now look here, there's no dot value, right? Like, where's value? What are we going to do? Look at what it's recommending first. Selected. Inside our dropdown, there's many different choices. It doesn't know which value you want. And what it's saying is, in the dropdown, I want the one that we select. So selected what? Use the IntelliSense, period, dot value. Now this may change. This is not always dot value. This may be dot name. This may be dot, proposal name. This is how, depends on how your data is formed. So use the IntelliSense. It's going to help you. That's the whole point. So next we're going to do comma, and we're going to do the description. So it is proposal description, and it is our text description dot what? Look at how it's different. The IntelliSense is helping us. The first recommended value is HTML.text. It's not dot value, it's HTML.text. Next, we're going to do our date. So proposal start date. I love the IntelliSense. It's really helping us. And it is DTE start date dot what? It's not dot value. It's not dot date. It's dot selected date. So the date that we click on. And then finally, after we have all our fields in there, ending the record with a squiggly. And I know there's an error in here. This is good. I want the error. Right now it's giving me an error. Like, being able to troubleshoot your problems is very useful. So when you hover over the red line, it's saying, hey, look at this. Status doesn't meet. It's a record and you're giving me a text. There's a few different ways to go over this. One is, let's go to the status column and let's put in our values in the status column. Instead of just writing them in here, we want to pull from the choices. So an easy way to do this, let me show you an easy way. Let's just create a blank screen, insert a form, go to this out of the box form and connect your SharePoint list in here. Now we could write this manually, but one easy way is just to go to an out of the box form and check out what the items is here. So we can unlock this property and just grab this. Choices from our SharePoint list, at our SharePoint list, grab the status field. And so let's go back to our form and go to status. And for our items property, let's just put the same thing in. All right, so now we have our three different choices: draft, submitted, approved, right? So we have our three different status values. Now it's still throwing a fit. It's still saying, hey, we're still finding a record and it's type text. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, instead of it being drop status.selected.value, I need to give it a record. And what record is it looking for? Inside here, inside our dropdown, when you click on edit, add field, you can add value here, right? So it's looking for a record of type value. Now this may be different, so you have to pay attention to these things. This is where wisdom comes in. So we want to give status a record. So right here, and I wish I could indent it better. Let me remove status for 1 second. And I want to format text. So now I'm formatted the text. Let's go back to status. So right here, let's put in status. It's giving us an error and it wants a record. So I'm going to give it a record with another squiggly of what? Look at that IntelliSense, of value. And it messed up my insertion here. .selected.status with another record. So now we're giving the status a record, which is what Power Apps was expecting. A record of what? Of value. It's looking for a type of value. And let's format text again. All right, so now we've updated our patch statement. We did a drop down that's expecting a record. We have a value in there. Very useful. Let's test it out. So let's give it a proposal. SharePoint list with, I don't know why I keep going to the weather, but we're going to the weather. Now for email, notice we can type in here. Let's just type in here for now. We can type in there. We can set the status. We have some rich text in here. We can write something new. And our proposal start date will be today. And then let's hit our save button. All right, our save button seemed to have worked. Let's go check out SharePoint. If we go to SharePoint and we give it a refresh, we can see we did write in a new row into SharePoint. So nice, beautiful, looking good. Everything came over wonderful. I see no problems as of right now. All right, so I've been talking for a long time. I realize we're getting close to the 40-minute mark. Now I know we put like some introduction, things that we were going to go over today at the beginning of the video, but we are going to do that at part 2. I'm going to edit the video and say, hey, this stuff is part 2. This is what we're doing today on part 1, and we're going to go on from there. So hopefully if you're enjoying this, if this is helpful, please like and subscribe, and we will continue the video next week. And if you're already watching this in the future, then you can just skip to the next video. So thank you all for watching. My name is Andrew Hess, and I'll see you next time.